Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One. Thank you, O my Father, for giving us your Son and leaving your Spirit till the work on earth is done.
I'm going to ask you to stand up with us if you would. This song says, let's make way for the Lord this morning. Listen to this verse. The God of all the universe is here among us. He is with us. The God who spoke and earth was formed is speaking to us, is moving through us. Hear the sound of angels sing. Glory to the King of Kings. Holy is the Lord Almighty. Only He is worthy, worthy of all praise. Oh, and see Him reaching down from heaven, God of all creation, moving in this place. Make Father, fix our eyes on you to see your glory, salvation story, and do what only you can do, for you are able, you're always faithful. Hear the sound of your church sing. Glory to the King of Kings. Holy is the Lord Almighty. Holy He is worthy, worthy of all praise. Oh, and see Him reaching down from heaven, God of all creation, moving in this place. Make way for the healer, our Redeemer. Oh, church, arise, lift up your eyes, make way for the healer, our Redeemer. Oh, church, arise, lift up your eyes. Holy is the Lord Almighty. Holy He is worthy, worthy of all praise. Holy is the Lord Almighty. Holy He is worthy, worthy of all praise. Oh, and see Him reaching down from heaven, God of all creation, is moving in this place. Make way. You may be seated.
Good morning and happy Sunday. This is the day the Lord has made. We are so glad that you are here with us today. You may think that your wife dragged you here or your husband dragged you here, or maybe you didn't want to be here, but God has brought you here to this place today because it is in Him we live and move and have our being. So we just want to ask you to open up your hearts and receive what the Lord has for you today. If this is your first time, welcome. If it's your first time back with us, welcome back. If you want to check out more of who we are, you can go to our website at your convenience. If you want to have a more personal touch, you can talk with somebody on the connection team. And there's a couple of ministry opportunities that I'd like to share with you. One of them is the backpacks that we've been packing for the last month, or that I'm still packing, actually. True. They're ready for the next leg of their journey. So if you'd like to join that process, you can get with Tiffany or Michelle for that. They'd love to give you information. Raise your hand if you can cook. Last service, not anybody really raised their hands. So if you can cook, do you know that Jesus cooked? It's such a sweet story. In John 21, he cooked breakfast for his disciples, which is so sweet. And in that story, I hate to call it a story because it's a truth, so I call it a truth. In that truth, Jesus also challenged Peter to feed his sheep. And we know that had a lot more meaning to it than cooking them breakfast, but I can't go into that because I don't have a seminary degree or anything. But we have a ministry here called Feed the Sheep Meal Ministry. And what we do is, we share meals with people. Some people within our walls that need a meal. Most of the time, it's people outside our walls that maybe they've had a baby, maybe they've experienced loss, maybe they've had surgery, and they need a little help with meals. And what better way to share the love of Jesus to somebody who doesn't know him, but through a meal. I don't want to fall off here, but through a meal. So the ministry provides meals every other day for 7 days. If you'd like to be a part of that ministry, Annie is going to be at the back of the lobby for sign-ups. You can sign up. Last year we fed 54 families, so it's not a demanding ministry, but we need cooks. Also, if you don't cook, go through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Amen? And pick up a meal there. Anyway, I'm going to pray. Thank you, Jesus. Father, Holy Spirit, we'd ask you to come and just change our lives, Lord. Just have your way in this place. Father, that we would worship you in spirit and in truth. Lord, I pray for a spirit of wisdom and revelation, that we would know you more, Lord, that we would love you more. I pray just your anointing upon this service through the worship and through the message today. May it change us, Lord God, and may we be empowered to go out and share the love of Jesus in our world. In your precious name, amen.
Would you stand up with us? Let's sing a straight hymn together from Matthew Bridges. Crown him today. Many crowns. Sing it together. Here we go.
Away
Crown him the Lord of life.
Crown him the Lord of life, who triumphed o'er the grave, who rose victorious in the strife for those he came to save. His glories now we sing, who died and rose on high, who died eternal life to bring, and lives and may die.
Crown him the Lord of heaven.
Crown him the Lord of heaven, one with the Father throne, one with the Spirit through him give, one God and glorious throne. To thee the endless praise, for thou for us hast died. Be thou, O Lord, through endless days, adored and magnified.
Amen. Great singing. And to such a God and to such a good God, let's sing to him this morning. This course allows us to do that. All my life, Lord, you have been faithful. Listen to this verse and then join us on the course, all right?
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing all the goodness of God.
Sing this with us.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice.
I love your voice.
You have led me through the fire and in darkness. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God.
All my life.
And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down and surrender now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. You may be seated. I'm going to introduce you to my good friend here, Jim Abbott, who is visiting with us today. And I talked to him into singing this great song by Big Daddy Weave that says, "This is what I live for." And it starts out by asking the question, what can I do with this fire on the inside? And that fire meaning that I know God has put me in this earth for a reason, and that is to probably reach other people for Him. And so what can I do? How can I do? What am I going to do about it? And it really says, I'm going to let the whole world know of His love. I'm going to go where He wants me to go. This is really what we live for. All right, here we go. Ready?
What can I do with this fire on the inside? I'm burning up with the truth I can't hide. Now you're the reason for this hope in my life. Gonna let it shine. I have to let it shine. This is what we live for. To go where you say go. To let the whole world know you're the light in the darkness. This is what we live for. To love the way you love. So God be lifted up. You're the light in the darkness. This is what we live for. This is what we live for. This is what we live for. Oh, oh, oh. When you breathe, even dry bones come alive. When you speak out, you shut down every lie. Now you're the reason for this hope in my life. I'm gonna testify. I have to testify. This is what we live for. To go where you say go. To let the whole world know you're the light in the darkness. Oh, this is what we live for. To love the way you love. So God be lifted up. You're the light in the darkness. Oh, this is what we live for. This is what we live for. This is what we live for. Oh, oh. Chasing your heart and all that you are. We surrender, surrender all. Your favor with us, your presence in us. Now Jesus, your name above it all. Yeah, what you gonna do when the fire on the inside? I said, now what you gonna do with this fire on the inside? This is what we live for. To go where you say go. To let the whole world know you're the light in the darkness. Oh, this is what we live for. To love the way you love.
word incarnation actually means to take on flesh. And it's weird to picture God as a human because humans don't seem very much like God, do they? I think most of us that have been Christians for a long time, we've been doing the church thing, I think we're starting to lose hope. We stop believing that Jesus actually changes things today. What if following God or following Jesus isn't about church attendance or getting your daily devotion in or trying not to sin too bad? The incarnation, or what it means to take on flesh, is actually an invitation to respond to what he did on the cross and actually live his life here on earth. So imagine if Jesus actually lived in your house and he parented your children. He went to work where you work. He lived next to the crazy neighbors you have. You know, if you were actually to live like Jesus, it would be a strange concept that the neighborhood would actually want to be in your house. And I wonder how much easier it would be to actually see friends find faith if they actually wanted to be with us.
Good morning, EAC.
Hi.
Hey, can we give a warm welcome to Hugh Halter, who's with us this morning? So I have been looking forward to this day. I remember I had just graduated from Bible college, maybe a year out. I was living with my wife in Huntsville, Alabama, and a mentor of mine who discipled me in high school gave me a book called The Tangible Kingdom, and it truly changed. I really don't say this, and I'm not somebody who's big on hyperbole, and so I mean this sincerely. It really changed how I followed Jesus. And it really impacted my life significantly. And so last night we had a dinner where Hugh joined kind of some of our elders and staff, and I got home and I was talking with Claire in our kitchen. I was like, this is just so neat for me because Hugh has had such a significant impact on my life, and now I get to share him with the church that I love. And so Hugh, I'm grateful that you are here with us today.
Glad to be here. Good morning, everybody.
So. Hugh told me before we got on stage that he's been working on an interpretive dance that he'd like to share. No, I guess not.
I feel like we're close. I'm just not quite there.
Next time you come out. So, okay. So we'll jump into the interview if that's not ready. It seems to me, Hugh, that you've lived much of your life with the mindset that believers are called to live their lives on mission. We've been talking about this as a church, but just to kind of reorient us to the discussion today, what is the mission? Like, what are we actually supposed to be about, and why does it matter so much?
Yeah, there's an old saying that the church doesn't have a mission, the mission has a church. And theologically, this is for all the smart people, God started his church because there was a mission. And oftentimes, if you and I grew up in the church, the word mission was even like, it was the weird people. Remember out in the foyer of the lobby, you would have pictures of your church's missionaries. So everybody else got the idea that, well, we've got 6 of them. And then the rest of us are not missionaries, and so we will pay a little extra money. We actually have Mission Sunday or something. So it was always like this extra credit type of idea, right? And yet in reality, the church is the mission of God to the world. And so we've got to stop having a missions division of the church and realize that everything is under the banner of God's mission to the world. Why else would we exist? And so we're going to talk a lot more this morning, but America has become a pure mission field now. So I get to travel all over the world talking to church leaders, and they now send their missionaries here to America because we're so jacked up. Okay, we're the number 1 receptor country in the world. They're like, you got to get them to America. They're not doing so well over there. And indeed, we're not doing so well. And so we have to finally come to that point, especially for those of us that grew up in the church, that we can no longer send a few people out, that we actually have to all be a part of God's mission. He says, the Father has sent me, I now send you. It's part of, it doesn't matter if you're old, 55, or you're 12, 13, 14. Everybody is called and everybody is sent. You cannot be sent and not called, and you can't be called of God and not sent. It's just God's always moving in the world, and so it's a beautiful privilege to kind of reawaken to that again for today. So
So, Hugh, living a missional life, then, it's not just for like varsity Christians? Like, it's not for like
apparently
people
not,
like me
'cause,
with degrees?
I got into it, so apparently it's not for the smart ones.
As you look broadly at the church in the United States, do you see a church that is arising to the challenges of this moment, or do you see a church that is unengaged missionally? Why or why not?
Actually, both. Yeah, at an organizational level, we have some 160 denominations in America. Every single one of those is on rapid decline. So at a movemental level or an organizational level, the collective story is not good, right? And yet what I do see all over the country are these almost like remnant communities of people that are going, okay, yeah, we can't do just church anymore, and so we're going to actually enter back into the neighborhood and into every nook and cranny of our culture. And those people are actually seeing, we call them, like even when COVID hit, the church, get this, like March 15 of that beginning of the COVID crisis, 90% of the churches in America stopped gathering on that one Sunday. Like that's a remarkable historical thing that happened. And yes, for most of those churches and denominations and movements that were focused around what we call a Sunday-centric church experience, yeah, everybody's been kind of pulling their hair out, trying to go, how do we reboot? Now that we're actually able to meet again, most churches are saying that we're at about 50% of what we were. So it kind of cut our church attenders in half. But I always like to remind people, Jesus didn't do all the great stuff that he did, especially what he did on the cross. He did not do that for church attenders. He has no interest in church attendance. What he was trying to do was change the whole world. And you can change the world with 20 missionaries a lot better than you can change it through 20,000 church attenders. And so there is an implosion of the organized church, and there's this beautiful uprising of people that are taking on the mission of God again. And whenever you do that, God gives his blessing and favor because that's what he cares about. So I think it's literally always right in front of us. It can happen at any time.
So Hugh, what's at stake? Like, what's at stake if we kind of pass the missional buck and we say, you know what, we just kind of like church as normal. We like coming, we like attending, but this missional stuff sounds like a lot of work. I got a family, I got a job, I go to a gym, like I'm just kind of busy. But what's at stake if we don't arise to the challenges of this moment and engage the mission?
Yeah, clearly the legacy is at stake. So I'm 55, I've got 5 grandchildren now. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where you didn't, even back in our first church planting days, it was rare to meet somebody that was a Christian. So in some of our cities in the country, they're very progressive. Portland probably was the least church city in America when we were starting our first church. And I just remember what it felt like to not know any other Christians. It was that weird. Sometimes in the South or Texas, places what we call the Bible Belt, we don't even know that world exists, but it is coming to a city near you, and you're already feeling this. And so, yeah, if we don't change at all, if we just circle the wagons and hope God returns before it gets too bad, then our children are not going to want to carry on the story. And that's really, when I think about why do we want to consider this, I also go, there's a way that I want to follow Jesus. Like for me, I want to see the power of God. I'm tired of just doing church and not seeing God literally show up day by day. And so those 2 reasons, your own spiritual formation, I think many of you need to see the power of God again. And I think you also care about your kids and your grandkids and them having an experience, not just a church experience, but literally seeing their entire life inside the calling of God. And so I think a lot is at stake, for sure.
One of the things that most captivated me about your writings was not even the why.
Well, it wasn't the sentence structure or the sentence beautifully crafted paragraphs or anything?
All of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
And in addition, was the how we're to go about living missional lives. And you talk a lot about incarnational living. Some of our folks, if they've been here, especially the last few weeks, they've heard this word. But could you just share with my church family how you came to embrace an incarnational approach to living life on mission?
Yeah. Well, joking about the writing, I've never liked public speaking, and I never even journaled. I hated writing so bad and hated public speaking even more, which is a little bit of a joke if you think about what God does with all of us. But don't just think about our story. God teaches each one of us in kind of unique ways of what we're going to do. Oftentimes what we end up doing with our lives and with people is not what we would ever think would happen, but we learned it along the way. Our son Ryan had really severe epilepsy, and I was actually in seminary. I thought I was going to go into what we call traditional pastoral ministry, and then I married my wife, adopted her son that she had. She was married when she was 18 and divorced at 19, and she came to faith a few years later. And so when I met her, Ryan was almost 5. And from day one of his life, he would have 20, 30 grand mal seizures every day. And so about every hour, it was just really disruptive, obviously. And so I had to leave seminary, struggled with the sense of why God wasn't healing our son, also struggling with, well, it seems like you don't even want me in actual real ministry. And when I look back, I just realized, no, God was bringing me into his ministry. We just didn't see it at the time. And so having coffee with my wife one day, I was lamenting to her how God doesn't seem to really care. I don't know if you've ever had a few honest moments with the Lord where you just like, I don't think he really, think my face is not on his refrigerator anymore. And she said, well, babe, we got to play the hand we're dealt. Why don't we just open up our front door and see what God does? And so we did. We began to rhythm our lives around having people over for meals and asking them really good questions, acting like we really cared. And in pretty short order, our house was full of people that would never have gone to a church. And they loved being with us, and they loved it when we would talk to them about their lives, and then they started to really ask us things about God. And so a lot of our friends came to faith in our homes, and we would baptize people in lakes and all sorts of, but we could never get to an actual building. So church for our family was always out in the neighborhoods. And then we had other people that would go, well, we want to do what you're doing. So we started a movement in Denver of about 25 missional communities. And we just asked people to live what we were live a rhythm of party and social gatherings where we can connect at a heart level with people, and then keep our antennas up for needs that come up and try to meet the need within 24 hours if you can as a community. And then a couple times a month we'd say we're going to have a little Jesus time, usually Thursday nights. And so those were just the rhythms. And then we would invite everybody into those rhythms. A little communion time with God a couple times a month, a little inclusive community, we called it, just throwing a party, no weird prayer before the meal, not trying to sneak attack anybody, maybe a toast, toast all of us new friends in the neighborhood. Let's toast to your jobs, that you'd have some unique favor over your work and health over your children. So we would pray over people. They just didn't know it. We just throw a little toast. And people started to invite friends and just go, like, this is the most meaningful thing we have going. Then when anything would come up, we would just call an audible. We'd go, hey, if anybody's free Tuesday night, let's go down. In fact, I remember a story where we were gathering for our little Jesus time. There was just 8 or 9 of us at the time. And there was a house right around the corner that was on the news, our actual local news, because the house almost burned down. And so we thought, hey, let's call an audible and just go down there and see if we can be of encouragement to them. So we all walked down, and we had some couples that were with us that they were not Jesus people. They just were at our dinner party. And we said, we're going to go help these folks. So we all pitched in, got some Safeway grocery cards, walked down there. I knocked on the door with my little community behind me. And we said, hey, you don't know us, but we heard what happened. You've probably had a lot of people come by to help, but we just wanted to let you know we care. And here's some food cards. she started the wife started to cry. She's like, no, nobody's come over at all. And I said, well, we've got a couple hours. Anything we could do to just help you guys? And she said, yeah, we were down in the basement trying to dig out stuff from all the rubble. And so all of our kids are with us, everybody. We're all down there as a family. And so we all helped out for an hour or two, and then we invited them back up for a little chili that we had in the crock pot for us. And they came up, and in short order, were a part of our community. But it was just a simple rhythm of what we did in our neighborhoods together, and people just seemed to lean in to us and into our faith.
This all sounds really like theologically complicated.
Yeah, it does, I know. But we've got to dumb it down for these people.
Okay, we're going to try.
So.
So how much Bible and theology training do I need to have to start living incarnationally?
You're good. Like right now, it's been proven if you grow up in the church up to 5th grade, so these young people are probably past that in most cases, somewhere in there, that if you grew up in church in America up to about 5th grade, you have more Bible training than pastors in most of the world. So we're good. We all got enough. Doesn't seem to be any reason why you would need more. When you watch Jesus with the disciples, remember, he's only got roughly, we said 3 years. We have actually studied, he really only had 2.5 years to get 12, which turned to 11. He lost one. Into sort of a training framework, to like take over the whole world. Imagine that. You got 2.5 years. And these were like the Jewish dropouts. So I don't know. I think the entire story of the New Testament, like the fastest growing movement that the world had seen to date was from the time Jesus died for the next 300 years. They didn't even have the Bible. They didn't have the book. They had little letters that they heard about. They couldn't download sermons. They didn't have any paid staff. They didn't have any buildings. They had none of those accoutrements that we think are so important in the church world, and yet it was the fastest growing. You know the fastest growing movement right now in the world? Fastest growing, and actually it outpaces numerically what happened even after the time of Jesus, is the underground church in China right now. And we think it's led 60% by teenage girls. And they don't have a building, they don't have the paid pros, and it's just getting done. The second fastest growing is the underground church in the Middle East, where right now people are just being obliterated. And it's like a fire. You can't stop it. And yet we in America, we got all the bells and whistles, and we can't seem to get there. So
one of the things that I appreciate about this local church family, and was true before I got here, was there was this DNA that we're called to go be the church. And we're called to represent Jesus where we live, where we work, where we play. So I think you're sitting in front of some folks who, for a while, have been kind of hearing this language and are maybe kind of ready to go. That's my hope anyway. And so what would you say to those folks who are like, I've been hearing about this for years. What are my first steps practically to start living this out?
Yeah, it's a lot of times people will like, even when I share our stories, they go, well that's you, Hugh. You're like, you got some like weird little pixie dust with people, and I actually don't. It's I tell people, I just put in the reps. Like Cheryl and I, literally for our entire marriage, 30 years, we tried to give away 5 to 6 meals a week together. That was our only, like, let's try to do that. And when you think about missionary skills, there's one missionary skill that works anywhere you would live in the world, and that's the ability to eat and converse with people. So again, not rocket science, but I don't know if you remember, as you read through the book of Acts where the church begins to form, the church up until Acts 10 was essentially a racist movement. It was for only Jewish people. And they were very brutal and didn't even think anybody else outside the Jewish world would be a part of God's family, okay? And then there's a story where Peter is on a roof. You remember this story. And he has a dream, and on the dream is a big tablecloth that comes down, and it's full of all sorts of animals that Peter, as a young Jewish boy, was taught never to ever eat. They were unclean. And in the dream, God goes, Peter, you can eat those now. And he said, no way, man. God, I would never eat those things. He thinks somehow, because people perceive their spirituality based on what they ate and who they ate with. It'd be just like at a lunchroom at an elementary, middle school. You always eat with your own, right? Same thing with adults in a church. We stay with our own, and anything outside of that is unclean. And so obviously the dream is that, no, we're going to change the story here. And so all of a sudden some Roman dudes come up, and Peter invites them into the house. And something is beginning to happen now. Some inclusion of people. And then all of a sudden the Roman guys send word up to the centurion and said, hey, we're going to bring the Jewish boys by. And if you guys have ever seen the movie Big Fat Greek Wedding, ever seen that one? It's a scene like this where all of a sudden this Roman house is jammed full of all these non-Jewish people going, some Jewish boys are apparently coming in. And then all of a sudden the Roman centurion invites Peter and his boys in. And it said that this man fell on his face, and Peter's like, no, I'm just a man too. Stand back up. And then they have a talk, and all of a sudden the church takes on a new flavor. Do you know that we got our name Christian in Acts 17? So before that, we didn't even have a name for our movement. They called us the Way, but they called us Christians at Antioch. And Antioch was when it was the first time the world had seen male and female in the same room, people of different skin colors. So our name really reflected the inclusive nature of who we were. We were following a God that was perfectly holy, yet he was a friend of sinners. He crossed all these social, racial, ethnic, economic, anything that kept people apart. He went, no, we're going to tear that stuff down. And so if we follow Jesus on mission, it would seem to make sense that the friends that he would have had would start becoming our friends. Agreed? And yet that's not the story. If you ask anybody anywhere in the world, and I literally have asked this in, I'm not kidding, Greenland, to Europe, to Australia, to South America, to inner city Detroit, to suburban Portland, are Christians perceived to be inclusive or exclusive? What's our street cred? We're always the exclusive ones. So something's happening where we are literally not following Jesus into mission. And I think we've got to actually repent of that. I think we've got to say yeah, we haven't been great. We've stuck to our own. So to me, the great good news is that whenever we take on it, the inclusive spirit of Jesus, stuff begins to move again.
That's good. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about being on mission together. Yep. So we've been preaching, and a lot of the content has been on how do I, as a disciple of Jesus, follow Jesus and represent Jesus where I live, work, and play. But as I've got to talk with you and read some of your stuff, it seems like doing this together in community is a really big deal. Can you talk about why the collective witness of God's people is even far more important than even the witness of a single individual?
Yeah, couple reasons. Number one is that in any setting or any time in history, people have a perception of what they believe Christianity is. In Matthew 16, Jesus is walking down the road with his boys, and he actually stops to ask them that question. Hey, what are people saying about me out there? And they said, well, it's actually pretty amazing stuff. Some think you're like Elijah or one of the prophets, So even Jesus was concerned. What do people say about me out there? And right now, don't do this at home. It will actually depress you. Just take my word for it. But if you Google is a search engine for all of you folks over 55, okay? It's how you connect with the interweb. And the Google search engines are set up to where they take all the combined ideologies and traffic of what people really think, and it actually ends up being pretty accurate. So if you type in Jesus is or Jesus was and hit return, it is flooded with 100% positive. Like the world actually loves Jesus. They really do. Like somehow they know he's not like his movement. Because if you type in Christians are, don't hit return. Because there's literally nothing positive comes up when you look at our collective street cred. Some think in fact, I was joking with Connor. I flew into Orlando, get my rental car. I'm just driving through, the back highways out here, and I see a truck with a big flag. You've seen them, right? This one says something derogatory against Mr. Biden. Okay? Just one word. You've probably seen it. Blank Biden. But also on the back of his truck was the fish symbol and a little banner from his local church that he goes to.
Edgewater Alliance? Or no.
But you just never know, right? It's that somehow we're known for a political angle, or that we support certain things, or our stance on what's happening at the U.S. border, or whatever it is. And you can tell it's confusing to the world, right? So right now the word evangelical Christian is not a good term. Back in the late 1800s, it was. Late 1900s. The word evangelical meant the ones that actually do good in the city. So the ones that were building hospitals, building schools, taking care of the poor. That was how the word evangelical actually was created. And now it's the Bible-believing, exclusive, homophobic, bigoted. I'm giving you all the stuff that will come up as you Google Christians. And it's because that's what they've run into. And so this is why you, as not just yourself, so I meet people all the time that will go, Hugh, you guys are not like what I thought a Christian was, but I've realized that's still not enough to get them over this huge wall of negative experiences that they've run into. And so this is why the community in the book of Acts and why the community now is our witness. That we see them always refer, it was what they did. It was what we call the us, we, and them is now the witness. When they finally see 10 to 12, 20 of you that hang together at the school, in the college, in the neighborhood, and they go, there's just something about all of you that we're not running into, and we're drawn to it. That's when we begin to get movement again. And so that's why we're going to talk a lot about the development of what we call missionary or missional communities.
And we'll get there in a minute and have you describe what that is. But
we've only got 5 minutes.
It's second service. So, it doesn't matter. They're like, it matters. Sounds like it would be really great if the Jesus movement was really about Jesus.
That would be helpful.
Okay, all right, I'm tracking with you. And this idea of collective witness, EAC, I know some of you are new. Welcome, glad you're here. For those of you who remember my dear friend, David Lane, most of you do, who was the lead pastor here, this was his testimony. I don't know if you remember this, but he shared his testimony a number of times. I still remember the names of the people. I'd never met him. He would say, Bill and Gloria were a couple that invested in my life. He goes, I would be over at their house. I wouldn't want to leave. I spent time getting to know Bill and Gloria. He goes, and then I showed up at Bill and Gloria's church, and there was like a lot of Bill and Glorias. There was other people that were really cool, just like Bill and Gloria, and David Lane ends up coming to faith in Jesus. And so there really is something that the Lord seems to leverage and use about our collective witness together. Like if I'm just living as a Christian by myself in my neighborhood, that's good, and that's like a beautiful thing. But what's really beautiful is if they get to see Jesus in a multiplicity of people, and they get to see how we're loving Jesus together and fighting for things that Jesus cares about together and accepting people together and taking down social divides together and practicing generosity and hospitality together. There's something that seems where people start sniffing around, they'll be like, this isn't just a good dude. It seems like maybe they serve a good God. So, sermon over. Okay. Missional communities. What are missional communities? Can you talk about briefly like how did it start for you? What was like your first missional community?
Yeah,
how did it form?
Ours always started just with our family. So in fact, now we've moved now to a little town called Alton, Illinois. Our son was there because of an assisted living center that we found. So we all moved in. My 2 adult daughters, their brand new husbands, we all moved. So there were 6 of us. When we started in Denver, there was 3 families that started together. Portland, we started with about 15 of us started. So it was always, that's where we began. And then we just started to think of rhythms that we felt like they sounded and smelled a little bit like what you would get in the aroma of the kingdom of heaven. So we just said, let's do three things. Let's have a time, a couple times a month, where we just talk about and go through the teachings of Jesus in our home. And so we would do that on Thursday nights. We would always have at least one or two times where we share a meal with people. Usually the weekends would be a big party. So party was sacramental for us. It was a part of the kingdom rhythms where we would create space where we would not invite people over for a Bible study. We'd invite them over for dinner. And we would not try to sneak attack them and pray before the meal. We would just do a little toast. And we would toast just like you would. It would be like a prayer. And then when needs would come up, boom. So I kind of walked you through that, but that was essentially the rhythm. What makes a missional community different than a small group is a missional community shares a mission. They actually say, we're going to care for the 6 blocks around the elementary school where all of our kids go. So all those families become the mission. They might say, I'm a part of a fishing club, so I'm going to make the fishing club our mission. We're going to find some people that have the same heart for the same people. For us, it was where our daughters played ice hockey. So we realized we were spending 30 hours a week with the same parents in the same ice rinks with the same kids. So we were almost full-time missionaries just within the hockey context. So we said, we're going to connect there. We're going to connect where we do coffee every day at this one coffee shop. And we're going to do our neighbors. So those 3 contexts, we said, so we got to find people that care about those same 3 contexts. And that's how we got started. A lot of what we're going to do with you guys is to try to train you in what your mission's going to be and who are going to be your fellow missionaries. And then all you do later is you share a calendar. You actually start looking at month by month, and you go, when are we going to throw our parties? When are going to be our little Jesus times? And the helping people tends to just happen all the time, so it's like a spontaneous activity that you do. And what you find is whenever you get any group of friends together, that rhythm around what we call communion, inclusive community, and mission, the kingdom becomes tangible. People start going, you guys smell right. You're not a stench anymore. You're like an aroma that we can't pick up anywhere else. And then they start to actually want to be with you. And you will find that if you go on mission, it's the same as it was in the early church. Jesus isn't going to ask you to go up to complete strangers and try to talk them into something. He's just going to say, they're going to start to get a whiff of you guys. And then they're going to come to you and ask you for the hope that's in you. So just be ready. And so to me, it's been a beautiful way to live for 30 years. We've had hundreds of our adult friends come to faith. We've never had to try to go after any of them. We've never had to try to start a conversation. We just live the rhythms of the kingdom, and we find that people are looking for good news. You can be assured of this, is that I already told you that they still love the king. People like the idea of the historical Jesus. They know he was a very good figure that changed the world. But they would love the kingdom. Everything that's reflected in Jesus' teaching about the kingdom, the world's desperate for right now. And so when you know that they will be drawn to the king and the kingdom, then all you got to do is find some friends and go, let's just live it out then. And let's see what God does.
So Edgewater Alliance Church, week 1 of the sermon series that we're in and that's culminating today called Flesh. If you were here week 1, I said we're building to something. And what we're building to is the launching of this missional community idea. And so Hugh has agreed to join us on the journey and help train future leaders of missional communities. And so this is going to be, in a sense, for those of you who are familiar with small group language concept, like moving forward, one of the things that we want to really emphasize is what would it be like if we unleashed small groups that were on mission together in our city. So there is fellowship, there is camaraderie, there is hanging out together, but there's also this idea that we are on mission together. And Hugh has agreed to walk alongside Edgewater Alliance Church and help us in this area. And it's going to be a process of rolling this out. And the first kind of invite to you with no strings attached, you're not committed to anything at all, is we want to invite you to a dinner this evening. And Hugh, would you tell them what you're planning to cover tonight at the dinner overview, and why people should come to the dinner?
Yeah, we're going to start a 7-week. It'll be online, you'll be Zooming. You can be sitting in your jammies, doesn't matter. And we're going to go through the basics of missionary life for about 7 weeks together. We're going to talk a lot about prayer, how to pray effectively, and even some spiritual formation stuff for us as we get ready for mission. And then after that 7-week experience, that'll take us into the holiday season. Then we're going to invite anybody that wants to actually pilot these missionary communities to go through about an 8-month learning journey. And that'll be more on the practices that you would do, kind of a little bit of what I just shared we do. And we're still doing this too. So we're just basically trying to impart a little bit of our story into you guys. So all of these are actually optional. Nothing really changes about the church, but this will be an alongside discipleship pathway to learn how to be missionaries again. And so if you're interested, come join us. If you can't make it tonight, we'll give you some information on how you can begin. October 10, right, would be the kickoff of that 7-week deal.
So to be clear, to be part of Edgewater Alliance Church, you don't have to be part of a missional community. That's not what we're saying. But we're saying this is an area that we want to engage. And this is something that we think the Lord might want to use us in as we seek to be the church where we live, where we work, where we play. And so if you want more information and you want to hang out with Hugh a little bit more tonight and hear more about this concept with zero strings attached, some people have already signed up online. I think we've already had over 30 people sign up online. But you can also sign up in the lobby on your way out for dinner tonight, totally free. All right, totally free, no strings attached. Come out and hear more about this idea. But EAC, can we thank you for being with us today? So thank you, brother. Appreciate you. God bless you, EAC. You are dismissed. Thank you for tuning in to this sermon. Hopefully it was a blessing to you and an encouragement. For some time at Edgewater Alliance, we have had the conviction that we are to represent Jesus wherever we live, work, and play. And in this season, we are seeking to put flesh on our missional framework and really answer the question of what does that look like? What does it actually look like to represent Jesus where we live, work, and play? And how do we do that together as a community of faith? Well, it would be our hope that many of you would join us on this journey as we seek to truly go be the church. If you would like more information about Edgewater Alliance, the various ministries we have, or partner with us financially, you can do so at edgewateralliance.org. Blessings.